Minister Hadju, it's good to see you again. You said back in March that the purpose of the Indigenous Business Directory is to demonstrate the Indigenous identity of those on the list. Is that still your position?
The Indigenous Business Directory serves as a tool to ensure that Indigenous business have economic opportunities to benefit from the
Sorry, can you just answer
Canada.
the question, though? You said in March that the purpose is to demonstrate Indigenous identity. Is that correct?
The list helps ensure that Indigenous businesses have an opportunity to compete for procurement
Minister,
contracts.
could you just answer the question? That's what you said in March. Is it still true?
The business,
Is what you said in March still true?
The Indigenous Directory is there to ensure that Indigenous business and Indigenous economic development can be furthered by the spend of the Government of Canada.
That's not the question and not the answer you gave in March. But in any event, you said in March that the purpose of the directory was to identify indigeneity of those on the list. Why was the ArriveCan contractor Dalian Enterprise removed from that list?
I don't have specifics, but I will turn to officials.
I'd like your answer, Minister. We heard from the officials on this last week. You weren't at OGO. I'd like to hear from you now. Why was ArriveCan contractor Dalian Enterprises removed from the Indigenous business list? Can we assume that it's because they were determined not to be Indigenous, or is there some other reason they were removed from the list?
I can't make assumptions on administrative decisions of the department, but what I can tell you is that if circumstances change and ownership structures of businesses, then they very well may be either added to the list or removed from the list.
Okay. Is Dalian Enterprises an Indigenous business?
We don't work with Dalian Enterprises. We don't have contracts with Dalian.
I know, but you did. They received over $100 million from the Government of Canada. They were part of the ArriveCan contract. They were able to get it on the basis of an Indigenous set-aside through a joint venture with a much larger company, even though they're only a two-person company. Again, could you clarify why Dalian Enterprises was removed from the Indigenous business list?
We no longer have Dalian and joint venture companies on the list, and Indigenous Services Canada doesn't have nor has had any contracts with Dalian.
But why were they removed from that list?
The officials have indicated they were suspended on March 12th due to questionable factors. And in fact, their suspension was announced on March 1st, so they are no longer on the list.
So I'm aware that there's some questionable factors involving Dalian. That's why I'm asking questions about it. Could you clarify, please, if they were suspended or removed on March the 1st, what was the reason they were removed?
So I will just reiterate that the purpose of the list is to support...
Minister, I want you to answer the question. Why were they removed?
So I will just reiterate that the purpose of the list...
No, Minister, you will answer the question. Why were they removed?
I have a question for you, Mr. Genuis.
There may come a time when that's a possibility, but it's not today. Maybe the Deputy Minister can answer if the Minister doesn't know. Could our Deputy Minister share with us
Mr.
why
Chair,
they were removed?
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I don't know if I'm allowed to do that.
Talk happening here, and the members asked a question, and we should give the minister an opportunity to answer it before jumping into the next question. So I'm gonna restart the time.
My question is simple. Either the minister can answer it, or maybe the deputy minister can answer it. Why was Dalian Enterprises removed from the list?
Mr. Chair, through you, I've given an answer to that question, and the list is not a permanent list engraved in stone, as the member would know.
Why were they removed from the list?
That list is something that is reviewed as per the request of other departments. The list exists, let's remind members, to ensure that economic development opportunities are there for Indigenous businesses.
Thank you, Minister. Again, this reference to economic development is completely different from what you said when you appeared in March. Your officials testified before the Government Operations Committee last week that they were removed because of reports in the Globe and Mail. Can you confirm that the decision to remove Dalian from the Indigenous business list was based on things that your department read in the Globe and Mail? That's
So
what your
through you,
officials
Mr.
told
Chair,
us.
that member may not think that this is about economic development, likely because his party has never focused on economic development for
Minister,
Indigenous
nobody is
peoples.
fooled by this.
But that
I
is
asked
the
a
purpose
simple,
of the
clear
list. The
question.
list is there to make sure that Indigenous
Minister, nobody is
businesses have
fooled by
opportunities
this.
to
I asked
compete
a simple, clear question,
contracts.
and you're not answering it.
There's too much crosstalk that's happening right now. It makes it very difficult for the interpreters to do their work. We've had numerous warnings and directives about this, and so I just want to again remind members not to have this kind of crosstalk.
I agree. Could the minister answer the question, please?
And so with that, I am going to restart it. So there's about a minute left.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to you for reminding the minister. Minister, it's my time. Very, very simple question here. Were your officials correct when they told the Government Operations Committee that the decision to remove Dalian Enterprises from the Indigenous business list was based on reports in the Globe and Mail?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the Indigenous business list is an important tool for the Government of Canada to meet its procurement targets, something that I will note under the previous Conservative government they didn't pay any attention to.
Thank you, thank you, Minister. You haven't answered a single question that I've asked in the entirety of these 6 minutes, but I'll ask you one more. Since you have now established that Dalian isn't an Indigenous company, and since they got over $100 million in contracts from your government under Indigenous set-asides, will you expect a company that was not Indigenous, that got over $100 million in Indigenous set-aside contracts, will you expect them to pay back the money that they received?
So, Mr. Chair, I think the phrase Indigenous set-asides is a misleading phrase, and I don't expect anything else from Conservatives who have no idea how procurement works and no idea what procurement targets mean.
You know so little about your file.
That,
you have not answered a single question that I have asked in 6 minutes. You haven't even attempted to answer a single question that I've asked in 6 minutes. And you have nothing but insults for other members rather than answers about your disastrous record of Indigenous procurement. You should be ashamed of the job you've done.
Mr. Genuis, your time is up. I'm going to.
Thank you. Minister Hadju, my colleague earlier asked about a case involving Canadian Healthcare Agency. They are a non-Indigenous company, very clearly. They were able, nonetheless, to take advantage of contracts that were supposed to go to Indigenous companies because they entered into a joint venture. Their partner in the joint venture was a one-person company, and that one person happened to be an employee of the company. So they said, hey, let's go into joint venture with one of our employees, and therefore we will call ourselves an Indigenous partnership, even though this is a totally non-Indigenous company. Can we at least agree that this is a clear instance of an abuse of the program? Would you agree that this is an abuse of the program?
I would say that the quote from Philip Ducharme, who's the VP of CCIB, is very important here. And he said, we cannot allow a few bad actors to cause us to move backwards on crucial support mechanisms designed to uplift
Minister, let me just jump in,
communities.
because I've engaged actively with the CCIB, and we've brought them to the Government Operations Committee, and I agree that that the objectives of supporting Indigenous economic development, I agree with their objectives. But I want to ask you the question that I asked you already, which is, do you think this particular case is an instance of a bad apple?
Well, they have been removed from the IBD, and I think that's an important indication.
But was this an abuse of the program?
I think that's an important indication of exactly why that list is important, because in fact, and why integrity matters.
Minister, was this an abuse of the program, though? I mean, I guess you're saying they were removed, so clearly it was an abuse of the program in your view. But you seem unwilling to say yes. Was this an abuse of the program?
I would say it was an abuse of being on the list without without adequate
So should they pay the money back that they received under the Indigenous procurement program?
Well, I think that in the case of this particular healthcare agency, two things can be true at one time. And the second thing that's true is that we have a nationwide nursing shortage. You may have heard of this. Actually, you do get up and talk about this occasionally.
Yeah, Minister, I'm going to jump in because you're going far afield of the question. What we have here is cultural appropriation leading to financial misappropriation. That is, you have people that are pretending to be Indigenous in order to get money that they're not supposed to be accessing. And it is precisely this that has led the AFN to say that a majority of companies in their view, that are getting these opportunities that are established in this set aside. A majority of those companies, according to the AFN, are shell companies. So do you see the problem here, and do you agree that that your government needs to be accountable for this failure?
What I see clearly is a plan for conservative cuts around a program that actually is about Indigenous economic development. But I will say this.
Minister,
Chair,
could you
if I
answer
could finish?
the question?
Mr. Chair, could I finish?
So,
Have you, let
Mr.
me
Genuis,
ask you this.
Mr. Genuis, I pause your time here again, so you've got about 45 seconds left. I think we're all very interested in hearing the answers of the ministers here, so please do give the minister a time to respond to the question, and I will give you back your 45 seconds, but just with that proviso.
Yeah, Chair, let me just ask very, very precisely. If you have an instance of cultural appropriation leading to financial misappropriation, that is someone pretending to be Indigenous, getting on the list, getting money that's supposed to be there for Indigenous communities, should they have to pay back the money that they took? Simple yes or no. Should they have to pay the money back, yes or no?
If a company is found to have breached contract provisions, that is an option for departments that have utilized that
Should
company.
they have to pay the money back,
and
yes or no?
What I will say
Yes
is
or
that
no?
it is clear that the Conservatives want to
Will
get
you
rid of
say
this
yes
program.
or no?
This is
Should they have to
something
pay the
that
money
they
back?
do not want to do. They do not want to support Indigenous
Should they have to
economic
pay the money
success,
back? Yes or no,
and
Minister?
we should all be very
Yes
clear
or no,
about what
Minister?
the
Pause it
intentions
again
of
here.
the Conservative
Yes or no,
Party
Minister?
is.
Pause this. This is enough of the crosstalk. I'll just give the minister the opportunity to answer this question. We already over time, but I just want to give her the opportunity to answer that.
Yes or
Contracts
no?
have been breached, then departments have the ability to take appropriate action.
Chair,
thank
I
you
have a
very
point of
much.
order I'd like to raise. Now, there are clearly established rules about the obligations of witnesses at committees to answer questions. Those rules apply to ministers. It's not like in question period where the speaker doesn't enforce rules around the content of the answers. There is a requirement. It is a matter of parliamentary privilege that witnesses have to answer questions that are asked. Now, I've been through 2 rounds, and the minister hasn't answered a single question that I've asked. And quite specifically, in the last round, I've asked a simple question to the minister. So I'd like to ask you, it doesn't matter if it's a minister or someone else, but to call our witnesses to order and expect them to provide answers to the questions that are being asked.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Carr, on the same point of order.
Yeah, I respect my colleague and his point of view, but as we've said many times before, receiving the response that you want and receiving a response are 2 different things. So hopefully you'll take that into consideration as you reply to my colleague across the way.
Just on that, I mean, I won't tease Mr. Carr too much about being a new member. I know he's earnestly throwing himself into things here, but the rules do establish at committees a requirement to provide answers. Doesn't mean I have to like the answer, but there has to be an answer to the question. You can't just talk after the other person talks about things that are totally unrelated.